Well, welcome everyone. I want to welcome each of you that are here tonight. Some of you are here with the candidates, some of you are here for the general public, and it's great to have all of you here for the first of two candidate forums for the Mankato Area Public Schools. We have 7 candidates who are participating tonight. Hopefully you may know some of them already. Maybe you visited our website at greatermankatogrowth.com where we have, or greatermankato.com, we have pages dedicated to the candidates where you can learn more about them. You can also learn how they've answered 10 different questions, each of them in their words, and so you get a chance to know each of them. But you're also going to get a chance to hear them tonight. Not just read their writing if you've already done that, but hear them and ask them questions. It's really our pleasure as a business development organization that's focused on the advancement of this community overall to bring these types of events to you as a general voting public. It's important you have an opportunity to know who the candidates are and what they're about, so that when you go to the polls in November, you can make well-informed choices. And that's what we like about these events, is the opportunity to do that. So on behalf of our organization, thank you for coming tonight. Now, let me describe a few pieces for you of how this is going to work. We have about 90 minutes together tonight. We'll conclude at 8 o'clock. Each of the candidates, they've been seated alphabetically. So that's the fairest way to start the process. What will happen is in the very beginning, we're going to ask each one of them to provide opening remarks. And we're going to give them 90 seconds or a minute and a half to do that. They can say whatever they want. They can tell you about their family. They can tell you why they're running. They can tell you absolutely anything that they'd like. Now, for the candidates, Donald, who's seated in the front row, will be timing for you so that you don't have to pay attention to a clock somewhere. He'll do that for you. When there's 30 seconds that remain in the time period that you've been given, he's going to hold up a sign. Donald, from that sign, he's going to hold up a sign that looks like that. Caution. And that'll be 30 seconds from the end. And when you hit 0, he'll hold up the stop sign. And that tells you you're done. And if you don't sort of take a breath and end within a few seconds, then Yvonne, who I'll introduce in a minute, who will serve as tonight's moderator, will probably politely try to move along at that point as well. You'll do that. The first opening will be an opportunity for you for a minute and a half. After that, we'll proceed to questions. Now, Kate, who's one of our volunteers, has distributed or is making available to you half sheets of paper that are for you to write questions on. You can have multiple sheets throughout the evening. You can submit as many questions as you like. We've got some questions that we're prepared to ask along the way. But we really want to make sure if you've got questions that you want to have asked and answered, that we get that done for you. And I'll be circulating around. If you have a question ready and you just need it picked up, you can just sort of wave your hand. I'll watch for that. We'll hand those over to Kay. She'll sort through those. So if 3 or 4 of you submit the same question, we definitely want to make sure that question gets asked. If it's already been asked or pretty close to being asked, she may set that aside in case we would run out of questions. Which I tell, with only 90 minutes, we'll probably get through about 8 or 9 questions. So if you've got a question you want to ask, you should make sure you get it in, because there's not a lot of time with this many candidates to get through a lot of questions. Okay? So that's how it'll flow. I'll give you this opening opportunity, and then when we're near the end, about 5 minutes to the end, about 7:55, then we'll come back up and we'll have just some quick closing remarks from each of you in about 30 seconds, and then we'll conclude. Does that all make sense? Okay? Everybody's got some water. They're hydrated. Let me introduce to you one of the members of our Public Affairs Steering Committee, and that's Yvonne Caribou. And Yvonne and this name tag's not right for her, by the way, so we'll change that. But Yvonne's one of our members of our steering committee, and last year I had to do about 20 of these, and next year when we have a general election, we'll have a lot of these forums. So we're going to start training our volunteers to be excellent facilitators as well, and Yvonne's the first one to step in and say, let me do this tonight. So from this point forward until we get to the end, you got to listen to her. She'll be asking the questions of you, and you'll be responding, and she'll be watching Donald and making sure everything flows. Okay? Well, thank you.
All right, we'll start with opening remarks.
Sure. My name is Judy Brandon. I have lived in Mankato for 42 years. I have 2 sons who graduated from East High School and have gone on to have successful careers of their own, and did receive an excellent education here in Mankato, for which I'm very thankful, and I'm sure they are too. I have been a professional educator for 30 years. I'm currently retired. I have been on the school board for 11 non-consecutive years. I served 6 years in late 1970s and early 1980s. And then after I retired, I was elected to the school board and I'm completing my 5th year now. It is an odd number because I was appointed to fill in a 1-year term and then was elected for a 4-year term. And I am currently the 2011, a member of the 2011 Minnesota All-State School Board.
Here's tough act to follow. Hi, my name is Jody Forey, and to just erase any of your questions, yes, I am Phil and Ruth Forey's 4th child out of 6. My brother and I were in the middle. And I grew up also in Mankato. I guess I just turned 43, so I've lived in Mankato for 43 years. And as a matter of fact, Miss Brandon was one of my principals, and Miss Hendricks was one of my teachers at Mankato State in education. I have my bachelor's degree from Mankato State in elementary education. I have a master's in education and special ed. And I just finished my physical health disabilities licensure. So I guess I might not, I'll probably tell you more stories about my adventures here in Mankato. I guess I haven't caused too many gray hairs. Well, maybe a few. Sorry. So I'll keep this brief and pass the baton on to you. Okay.
Hello, my name is Sarah Hansen, and I am finishing my 1st term on the board. I've lived in Mankato about 9 years, and my husband and I are proud to have 3 children in the district right now. We have a 3rd grader and an 8th grader and an 11th grader, so I have the privilege of going to 3 PTA meetings and knowing 3 buildings and knowing 3 completely different cultures, because even though we're one district, every building's got its own personality. So I look forward to next year when it'll just be in year 2 buildings. One of the reasons why I ran 4 years ago was because I'm particularly interested in kindergarten readiness and early childhood issues. And while each of the board members who sits on the board right now all focuses on the strategic plan, we try and make decisions based on what's best for the students. Each of us do kind of have different areas that we are particularly interested in. That happens to be mine. And the 2 ways that I am contributing right now in that area is the Gemelli, Greater Mankato Early Learning Initiative, working on how we manage data better. And also, I'm one of, actually the only school board member in 9 counties serving on the new regional early intervention program. And so I'm excited and look forward to the opportunity to continue doing that kind of work in the future, whether I'm elected or not. So look forward to the discussion.
Thank you. I think my name is Ann Hendricks, and I think Sarah put it really well that all the board members bring something special to the board, no matter who we are, no matter where we come from. I've been on the board for 15 years. I'm the current board chair. I hold a master's degree in special education, and I'm currently a full-time teacher at the Minnesota Security Hospital in St. Peters. I have 3 children, actually 4 children, because I count my daughter-in-law. I have 4 children who graduated from Mankato High School and have gone on to careers and successful lives after that. Since I've been on the board, I've taken a real interest in the fiscal responsibility of our board. During this time, we've maintained our 30 days, having the 30-day budget out so that we are fiscally responsible. I also sit on the Region 9 Development Committee as well as the Minnesota State High School League. So we all carry a variety of jobs, we all carry a variety of interests. Things that I'd like to see in the future are continue to be that studying of what's going to happen to our district in the next few years. So as we look at our long-range pieces, that's something that I look forward to doing.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tom Rexby. I've lived in Mankato since 1986. I grew up in a small community 60 miles northwest of here called Fairfax, Minnesota. I have 4 children, 2 daughters in college, and 2 boys that are at East High School. And 4 years ago, I ran for this particular public office because it interested me from the standpoint that my wife is an educator. She's got a early childhood master's degree, and I've always insured a lot of school districts. My business background is in insurance, and I did a lot of school districts, and was just fascinated with how things ran and just the energy that school districts provide, and I just thought this would be a great board to be on. My particular background, as I mentioned, is in business, and that's kind of the talent I think that I bring to the particular school board here. We have a very good mix of school board candidates, school board members right now. They all have their strengths, and this is one of them that I think that I excel in. And 2 weeks from now, if you ask me about curriculum, I'm going to say, ask these guys. So, with that, I look forward to this evening's debate, and thank you all for coming.
Good evening. My name is Abdi Sabri, and I did not grow up in Mankato. I'm originally from Somalia, and I've lived all over the United States, and I'm a parent of 6 children, and they all go to District 77. 2 of them go to Eagle Lake Elementary School, and 3 of them go to East High. And I have 1 preschooler that goes to the Community Center. And I'm very much involved in the school, just by having 6 children that go to all these different levels. I know a lot of teachers and principals, including, the school board members. I know them all very well. I have great interest in the education of all our children. And Sherry Allen was a great addition to the school district. I have lived in many big cities with a lot of problems, unlike Mankato. I've lived in big cities like Atlanta, Georgia. I've lived in Washington, D.C. area. So I've been exposed to many different, bigger districts, and I've dealt with them because of my children going to school, and I've seen many problems. We have a very good system here in Mankato, but there's always room for improvement. And because of that, I have a lot of talent that I want to contribute to the school district. That's why I'm running, and I look forward to this debate. Thank you.
Good evening. Last but not least, my name is Thad Schunkweiler, and I also did not grow up in Mankato. I came about 8 years ago when I started my undergraduate degree here and loved it so much that I decided to stay and finish my master's and nearly finish my doctorate here at MSU as well. Currently, I work with Ann at the Security Hospital. I work as a psychologist on the units. Other than that, I'm a veteran. I spent about 18 months overseas. And so recently I thought about a way I could give back to this community, which has already given me and my family so much. And my family's the loud ones in the back, the little tiny ones. And so I apologize if they're noisy. But I thought about ways that we could give back to the community. And I thought, what a better way to start than to start where it matters most, and that's the education of our kids. And so that's what kind of prompted me into this. This is my first go at it, and so I look forward to learning about what goes into running a school district and having the privilege to meet with Superintendent Allen to hear more about the strategic plan and the long-term goals of this community, because it's awesome. It's a great place to raise a family, and I'm really glad that we settled here. So I look forward to hearing from everybody else tonight, and let's get this thing started.
You can hold on to the microphone if you'd like.
I can.
Tonight's topic, we're focusing on fiscal considerations and funding of the district. If you have questions outside of that area, it's perfectly fine for you to submit those questions as well. So you can have, you can stay on topic or you can get off if you'd like to. One of the things you did mention, and I mentioned to some of you as you came in, but I want to be sure to cover it and have everyone here too so they understood. You have a few wild cards sitting in front of you. What those are for is as we go through and we ask questions, each person's going to have the opportunity to respond to each question. You also have the opportunity once during the evening to play the wild card, and that allows you to add some additional information after everyone else has responded to that question. I'll come back to you if you've played that wild card. You can add some more information, you can rebut someone else's response, whatever additional information you'd like to share. Any questions? Okay, we'll start. Is it all right if we start with you since you have the microphone?
Let's do it.
All right. We have some questions from the audience to start with. We'll get yours first, and then if we don't have enough, I've got some extras. First question. It appears that Mankato East has more and more minority students. How do we keep a balance between East and West?
Well, the first thing kind of keep in mind with that is that we need to embrace culture. Culture is here. It's part of our community, and what a great resource it is to have in our community to learn from one another. I mean, I'm sitting next to Abdi here, who comes with a variety of experiences from all over the world, and having visited some places in the world, some not so nice places, it's good to to embrace culture and to really use it as a resource for our district here. As far as how to balance it, I think it's important that we don't get into a situation where we have all of one culture represented in one school and not in the other, because that really kind of separates things, and we need to make sure that we're keeping the integrity of the district by using culture as a resource.
That was a good answer. I've already actually spoken to Sherry Allen and the district leadership about this particular issue, and I was told that because of the budget limitations, we're not able to balance currently, but that's the goal of the district, to have a balanced, to have, right now they only have ALL programs that are essential for non-speakers of English. They only have that because of budget limitations, they have that at least high. But eventually, the district will have ELL program at each school, and that way we'll have everyone will have the same exposure, regardless of which high school you go. And I have confidence that's going to happen.
Abdi is correct when you talk about the ELL program. It first started at East High School because that's where the concentration of English language learner students were at. And it partly is an economy thing, as well as housing becomes more available and affordable on the other side of town. People tend to migrate to where the housing is, and then they're able to then go to the different high schools as well, so you're not having to bus people and transport people all the way across town. So it is partly a budget issue, and it's also partly an economic issue within the community itself. Balancing it is always a moving target, because every year you take a look at where your students are at and what programs they need, and then you fit your budget to the needs of the students.
The school district isn't in the business of housing the families as they come to the district. We're in the business of educating them and welcoming them in. We do have our welcome centers at a number of our elementary schools, and certainly we do have a large ELL program at Mankato East High School as that has developed, because there was a concentration there. But a number of our elementary schools across the entire district have the welcome centers and the news centers and that sort of thing. A number of years ago, we did face continuing budget constraints, and part of what we had to decide was where are we going to concentrate our services. And at that time, we concentrated our services where we had the largest number of students who needed those kinds of services. And as that broadens, we will continue to take into advice, we'll continue to change and adjust as we need to across this district.
Well, I will add on to what Ann says. The issue is partly financial, as Tom was saying, but it also really comes down to what critical mass. And do we want to be spending money paying teachers to be driving from west and then driving to east and then driving back to west? And that's not really valuable time. And so we did hit a point where we said, for now, let's concentrate our services in one place so that all of the money that we're investing is actually providing instruction for those students. Now, as that critical mass grows, then we're able to have a lot more options, and that's happening now. You see what's happening at Jefferson, for example, which is a West Side Elementary, very large program. Large population in upper North Mankato, and so then you're more likely to see services spread out. And so it's both a function of finances and critical mass, and making sure that the money that we spend is really hitting the students who need it, whether it's an English language program or any other need that a child has.
Good job. I go after really hard people. Now, since I've lived in the Mankato area a long time ago, I ran into somebody here at this meeting, and we were talking about some of the early families that have been brought into Mankato, and we really didn't concentrate on exactly what school they went to, except that they did go to Washington, because Washington did have a very strong ELL program. I don't know why. But they had a strong program, and we did. We brought them in. We gave them the life skills. Instead of that focusing on where people are living, people go to different places. I'm not sure, if you can put your finger on it, it is hopefully we're spreading out and everybody's getting together. But when we bring in these new families, we just do have to focus on that, just the education of the child. totally agree with what has already been said. So.
You've really heard some good responses, and I agree with what's been said, but maybe as a historian, and I can put some perspective on this. When I first became a principal in Mankato, Southeast Asians were the predominant newcomers to Mankato. And we had Southeast Asian students in many of our schools across the district. And we did realize that it was very difficult when we had 5 students here and 3 students there and 7 students in another school to accommodate them. So we did develop centers where the newcomers were best served by people with qualified credentials to work with those students. Now, as we have a much broader, much greater diversity, and they are in our community, in all areas of our community, we can again think about giving them the appropriate education in the schools closest to their homes.
I'm going to try and pass the mic as over as possible.
What is the appropriate role of the referendum in the financing of public education?
I'd like to think that schools were funded adequately in all areas and we didn't have to consider referenda. But the fact of the matter is, as funding has changed, as the sources of funding have changed, as legislative decrees have changed in terms of funding, schools are finding that the Minnesota miracle of many, many years ago is not adequately funding our schools. District 77 works very hard to work within our budget. We do use referenda when it's absolutely necessary, but we do take into consideration the ability of our community to support education, and we're very respectful of that.
Thank you. I've decided that I have to write things down, because if I start speaking from the hip, I start to forget what I'm going to say. So what I put on for the appropriate role of the referendum in my short time of listening to what Judy was saying, and she said the appropriate role of the referendum is to stay within the budgetary guidelines. We have an award-winning board as far as fiscal responsibility, which is an awesome task to run against. And a lot of things are, well, you know, looking on the budgets from the state is that if we need more schools, I guess we will, it'll be a great thing to have to build them. I think it's a great opportunity for our kids here in Mankato.
Well, there's really 2 questions there. What is the role and what should the role be? And I'm going to try and do both. What the role is for the board is to make sure that the students that we're educating leave high school prepared to do whatever they're going to do next, which may be employees for some employers here in Mankato. It may be going on to post-secondary, whatever that might be. Our job is to prepare them, and we need the resources to do that, which means sometimes we need to supplement what's provided by the state, and that's why the referendum process is in place. What the role, I think, should be is that it should be fully funded by the state so that we're not creating inequality across the state. If you live in Ely, Minnesota, and you cannot get a referendum passed, that's not fair. That's not the Minnesota I grew up in the 1970s and the 80s, and I don't think it should be Minnesota now. But the reality is that we have a referendum in place, and we have had an awesome support locally since I've lived here, because the businesses and the homeowners know that if we are spending the money wisely, and we would not ever be asking for money that we aren't going to be using responsibly.
I think Sarah answered this about as clearly and as succinctly as anyone could answer. What is the responsibility? What should those referendums be for? What I like about the referendum is that it allows us at the local level to decide what the capacity of our community is with regard to educating our children. Do we need the building? Do we need an operating referendum? Our technology referendum is a piece that we're asking for renewal this year. What are the things that our students need in our district to make us successful, to allow us to continue to be successful as a school district? We are very, very sensitive, I think, as a board and as administration in determining what can our community do for us
And how do we market that piece to our community? We're sensitive to that. We want the capacity to be there, and we want the students to be successful.
I won't explain what the role is because it has been explained beforehand, but just to give you a little perspective, Mankato School District ranks in the bottom third in the Big Nine in referendum dollars that we ask from our community. In the 4 years that I've been on the board here, we've not come to the community to ask for a referendum. The technology referendum was in place. Again, we're going to ask for a renewal of that. It's not an increase, it's the same dollar amounts every year. So I do think the school district has used taxpayer money very wisely. And another example of using it wisely is the last referendum to build Rosa Parks School. Because the bid contracts came in so favorably on how the dollars were spent, we gave back $1.5 million from taxpayers. That doesn't get said very often. People tend to forget that. But that was a reality, and you're getting that over a 3-year period. It doesn't make a lot of difference in your budget, but to us it makes a lot of difference feeling that you gave us the money, we spent it wisely, and we didn't need this much, so we're giving it back to you.
Everything has been said already, since I'm one of the last ones to speak. But what I wanted to add to that is referendum should be the last resort. We should only use it when we need it. We should increase the partnership with private companies, since the children that we are training are the future workforce. So we should involve as many big companies as possible. We have a good partnership between the private sector and the school district, and we should be able to have a partnership that works for all of us. And we should use only the front only when we need it.
It's no mystery that we're living in some tough economic times right now, and we're faced with some tough choices on a lot of different fronts. And with education, it being one of them, the referendum allows us to continue to fund in a responsible way the priority, which is the education of our children. I want to make sure that my kids and your kids and the kids of this community are getting the best education possible and are being prepared for that next step. As an adjunct professor at MSU, I work a lot with freshmen, and a lot of college freshmen are coming in without the basic skills. They're not. And so I want to make sure that our priorities are set and that we're spending money responsibly to prepare our kids for the next step, whether that's higher education or, as some other folks have said, which is the workforce. And I'm happy that I live in a community that supports those priorities in a responsible way.
Avi, if you'd be kind enough to start with the next question. Great. National education reform efforts in science and math have indicated that scientific literacy in the 21st century will require schools to offer 4 years of high school science, including earth science, if students are to be competitive. Would you support the Mankato schools following the national standards, even if the rest of Minnesota is slow to follow? Why or why not?
Yeah, I believe we should follow, absolutely. And we should even exceed. We should compete on a global level rather than national level. The United States seems far behind on many other developed nations. So we should set our bar outside the United States rather than within the United States, and to compete globally. Right now, the United States may not be the only superpower very soon. And we have the EU economic power, and then we have China. And everyone is gaining ground on the United States. So we should compete on that level rather than within the United States. And Minnesota is one of the good educationally, one of the top in the United States. But still, we can do better and compete with Western Europe and Japan and Asia, Far East Asia, instead of confining ourselves within the United States.
To echo off what Abdi said, I completely agree in that sciences or STEM classes, your sciences and your maths, need to continue to be a priority in the United States. You know, the data shows that that's where we're slipping and other countries are gaining an advantage. So I completely agree with reinforcing the science or the STEM classes to ensure that our kids are getting the best advantage or the head start in those programs. Not every kid's going to grow up to be an engineer, but we should give them the essential tools at the beginning to make that possible if they so choose. And so being creative and finding ways to bring those classes like earth science and geography and geology and some of those classes to give our students at least an introduction to those courses and to capture their interest at a young age to see which they want to pursue. So I do agree with that.
Thank you. STEM, for those of you that don't know, stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math. And we do have a STEM program. We have a very active and a very involved STEM program in our high schools, and we're very proud of that program. I do believe that if we think about the 8th grade science curriculum, we do have earth science in 8th grade, and then we have 3 years of science in the high schools. So we are offering those students 4 years of science, even though it is not all in the senior high. So I think we are giving these students a good grounding in science and exposing them to the various areas of science and encouraging them to look to science when they think about careers. And I do support the science that we're doing and all the encouragement that we are giving young people, boys and girls, to enter these fields.
Thank you. Abdi, I have a story to tell you that I was at a wedding just this last summer, and one of my cousins from, I believe, Omaha, she was a teacher, and she was telling us about this young teacher who had been teaching in a science classroom, and his classroom was from the 1950s, I mean, or sooner, before anything was brought about. And there were terrible school conditions. And then what he did was, without anybody's permission, he said, hey, come on into your 3M and come on into your businesses. And he got a $3 million donation. And their school, I guess, is just gorgeous now. And I'm not saying that we've got a $3 million benefactor in Mankato, but it is a good idea to bring in our community leaders and say, hey, what can you do to help us? It's a great idea.
If you'd asked me this question 4 years ago when I was running, I would have said, yes, how could you not support 4 years of science in high school? And what I have learned in my first term on the board is that we have a really good process in place, and we have administrators including building leaders, as well as Sherry Allen and her team. And what they do is they look at what's happening in science, before kids show up, kindergarten all the way up through 12th grade, and are we hitting the mark, and are the students leaving prepared? We just went through an awesome alignment process. We now have the same science on both sides of town. And so if the people who lead that area, this is sort of a not enough information to make a recommendation or a decision question for me, I would need a lot more. So if a recommendation came with a whole lot of study, a whole lot of research, and a whole lot of information behind it that said, we do need to offer 4 sciences and require them, and here's why, then we can have a discussion. Or everyone else is doing 4, we're sticking with 3, and here's why. And so we really have to trust the process that we have in town, which supports making those decisions.
I think you've had an opportunity to hear what the district already has in place and the commitment that the district has toward science, math, technology, and the kinds of curriculum that were part of the original question. All of that I agree with. There's nothing about that that I could go against or discuss from the opposing side. I only offer a question for those of you who are with us tonight. Is that the only thing that we want our students to be interested in? We're pressed about assessment, we're pressed about numbers, we're pressed about collecting data and that sort of information. I think there are other things we also need to address with our students. There's recent information about the humanities and the importance of humanities as we develop our young people. Attracting young people from the very minute they enter school kind of makes me a little nervous. It bothers me somewhat because I do think there's still room for that discussion of the humanities and how does our world work and what makes our world what it is today.
My answer will be very short and sweet because the question was, would I endorse the school district following the national science standards? And the answer is, I don't know. Because I need to find out what they are, need to understand what they are, need to learn what the data is. It's been mentioned before that we have a very good administration staff under Sherry Allen, and Cindy Amoroso is our director of curriculum. I would follow their lead, understanding what the issues are. Mankato might be different than St. Peter, might be different than any other community. What our job is to provide the best education and the best available student once they graduate from high school here to produce a good citizen. So following that, yes, don't go ahead.
Would you like to start with our next question? You can keep that then. What would you tell a family that is thinking of moving from the district in order to take advantage of more non-charter school opportunities, i.e. STEM schools, language immersion, etc.?
Not sure I'd tell a family anything. I would want to find out why they're moving. And there's obviously a reason. If they've already made that decision, it's a little tough to bring them back. So our goal is to help them understand their choices here before they make that decision to move away. We embrace charter school format with Bridges School here in town. It's unfortunately that we have a waiting list for those students wanting to enter that school because we've only got an enrollment limit right now of about 150. So the fact of the matter of telling a parent what they feel is best for their child at a different school, whether it's a charter school or a smaller school where their child might feel like they're more involved. I embrace that. I encourage parents to make the best decisions for their student. Hoping it's Mankato, and I'll certainly encourage them to really consider Mankato. So if you reverse the question, if someone's moving to Mankato, I've got a lot of stories, but not to tell somebody if they're moving away.
I think every parent has the opportunity to decide what's best for their children and what's best for their family. We do have a lot of opportunities here in Mankato. I can show them that if they haven't had an opportunity to see all the different things that we have in our district. But I have to agree with Tom. If they've made the decision that they're going to leave us for some other particular reason, like a language immersion school, well, then that's a decision they're going to make. But that's based upon what that family needs for their family. We have a lot of opportunities here in our district, and I can certainly show them, and I'd be glad to take them around, take a peek at all those things that we have in our district. But a family has to decide what's best for their family.
Agreed. I mean, as a board member, I don't see, even as a friend, I don't really see it as my job to try and change someone's mind on that. Every child has unique needs, and every parent is in a better position than I am to decide what's best for that child. We've been in 4 different school districts as a family, and there are, disadvantages and trade-offs. I would say one thing I've learned here is that people are loyal to their schools, more so than anywhere I've lived. Just try and change the boundaries. And you will see just how loyal people are to their schools. But every person who is concerned about moving to a new elementary, I have followed up with personally, either because I've run into them informally or whatever, and every one of them can't believe how wonderful their new school is. And so when I talk to people who don't live here, what I like about being here, families are engaged, people are loyal to their schools, to their teachers, to their principals, and that's part of what makes a smaller town good.
Thank you. Yes, I agree that if a family wanted to move for different opportunities, that we wish them well. A lot of things that Mankato does offer that I suppose that, just speaking of a student that I know from my family, who English and math and science are really not his cup of tea, but thank goodness shop programs are. And there are different specials and other art forms that Mankato offers that we sometimes forget about when we talk about the testing and the data and everything like that, that we have to remember that it makes the whole town more enriched if we have music and art and things like that. And I'm a big supporter of those kind of programs.
In my former life as an educator, I always told parents that they had to be the advocates for their children. When they came in to talk about what was happening to their child in school, I said, you have to be the advocate for your child. You have to speak up for your child. So, of course, I agree with what's been said about parents knowing what's best for their child. But if somebody came to me with that concern or that question about what to do, I would say, as an advocate for your child, what can you do here in Mankato to help us meet the needs of your child? And encourage that parent to work with us so that we could meet the needs of that child and any other child.
It's a timely question for me, as just last week I was actually visiting with folks as I was kind of introducing myself and my candidacy for the school board, and I had a local family here share with me that they did in fact move their kids to Lake Bristol School District for some other opportunities. And in that, I kind of asked more questions and kind of got behind what was going on. And I do support with what everybody else has said here, in that parents can and they should make the best choices for their kids and be the advocate that everybody has talked about. And I agree with the last statement in that, to encourage parents to be that advocate, to seek out those opportunities, that the responsibility to be the advocate is on them, to seek out those opportunities. But as a district, it's our responsibility to hear their concerns and to field them and to make sure that we're meeting the needs that may come arise.
I also agree with many of the sentiments that have been said. No one can provide everything for everybody, and sometimes people have to go elsewhere with some program that they like better. And but there's always room for improvement in our district, and that's what we work on. We always have to. We should not take things for granted, and we should always be moving forward and have. Our success, we should have a high standard for our kids, for all our kids. But sometimes we cannot provide everybody, what they are looking for. But you have to let them decide what they want.
Could you please pass the microphone to Ann? Next question is.
There's a wild
You want
card.
Tom?
Oh, I'm sorry, wild card up. Sorry, I didn't see that. Go ahead.
Want to test this?
Yeah.
Just for
All
the
yours.
general public's information, that the Mankato School District actually has more students enrolled into our district than enroll out. I think our net gain is about 160 students more that roll into our school district because of the curriculum and the programs that we offer versus students going out. So I just wanted to clarify that for the public.
Next question. What are the class sizes? How have they increased because of budget concerns? What can be done to lower class sizes?
We just did our demographics here at the 1st of October, which are our standards. They're the parts that go into the Minnesota Department of Education. Our elementary class sizes continue to eke up a little bit. I couldn't give you the exact numbers. We have that information available to people. The other part of your question had to do with what can we do about it? What can we do about those class sizes? We continue to evaluate that. We have brought in over-enrollment. We have brought in, at the elementary level, additional math or core, what we call core teachers, which work with the math and the reading of groups of students within those regular classrooms to ease off the number of students that are in those elementary rooms. Our lowest number of students right now are 10th graders. So as they continue to move out, we're going to see that budget adjustment process at the secondary level, but our big numbers are coming in at the elementary level, so we'll continue to evaluate those classrooms and add teachers in classrooms where we can, but there's only so much space.
So now you have to finish that with the specific stuff.
Go.
Okay, you threw me there, Ann.
I'm sorry.
But I can't pick up right where you left off, but I'm interested in the assumption sort of built into the question, which is that it is desirable to have our class sizes reduced from where they are. And again, that's what I would have said 4 years ago, but what I've learned now, as Tom did, I'll clarify some factual information. Our average class sizes are actually, again, in the bottom half of schools that are comparable to ours. So compared to what other schools are facing around us, and in southern Minnesota, we're quite a bit smaller. But that said, that we're not seeing that there is necessarily improved learning or improved experience by having much smaller classes. And so that's another area where I trust our administrators. Here's where we need during small group reading instruction, we need smaller. But during some of these other times, we don't. So how do we best use our resources to get the most gain for all of the students? And that might mean that some classes are a little bit larger.
Thank you. What I was thinking of as a teacher and having an enormous class of 25 or more, and how difficult that was to manage that. And what I'm wondering for some of these teachers that do have to contend with higher class sizes, whether or not maybe some of these extracurricular or special activities such as the gyms, the art, the music, the theater could be added in and worked on a way so that we could lower those class sizes for those teachers who are teaching those very important core classes and trying to get those test scores up. I'm wondering if that would be an idea.
You might be surprised to know that in the past 4 years, our average K-6 class size has crept up 1 percentage point. That doesn't help if your child is sitting in a class with 28 students or 29 students. But we do put our resources in keeping our primary classes small, and then gradually as the students get older and become a little more independent learners, the class size goes up a little bit. We do watch that very carefully, but neighborhoods don't always come with children in neat little packages of 22 students in first grade and 22 students in second grade and 22 students in third grade. So we do have that balancing act of how do we accommodate students in their home school and provide the best learning environment that we can.
I was a part of one of those neat little packages that was last stated. There was 23 students in my graduating class. So I came from a district who had very, very small class sizes. I mean, 23 students total in my entire class. And so it's shocking to hear some of the sizes of courses as students move through the education system here. But I agree with what's been said in that, you know, constant evaluation of what's important and to take a look at the numbers and to make adjustments where necessary. I echo the concern about the core classes and making sure that the attention is given to our students in those classes where we do need to give them extra attention. And, you know, gym classes, there's 45 kids running around, that's probably a good thing, but not so good if we're looking at our sciences and our maths.
I think that in the elementary school, we should have the class size as minimum as possible, because those are the formative years, and that's what makes the difference for any child to become successful later in life. That's when we can really find out their learning practices. We can intervene much easier than we can when you're in high school, for instance. And I believe that in the elementary school, we should concentrate and work hard on make sure that the class size is small enough so that each child gets some personal attention from that particular teacher. They get to know them very well. And later on, we'll let that creep up, but in the elementary school, we should keep it as low as possible.
Our building principals and their staff work very hard at minimizing the impact of a classroom of 28 students. Judy had mentioned that over the last 4 years, our class sizes have crept up 1 student, which is still, we're in the bottom third or half of the Big Nine, which we compare ourselves to a lot. So what happens is you play with the cards that you're dealt. And so we look to the building administrator. What do you need? What can we help to support you in educating our children? I'll give you a little example of it. Maybe this is on the technology side. Again, for the technology referendum that we're going to be asking for, is part of those dollars that we're going to be using them for is to have a sound system in every room. Those students in the back of the room deserve the same voice inflections and hearing ability as those same students in front of the classroom. So that's what we're investing in, and that's what we're trying to help all those classrooms have the same learning experience from that teacher.
Sarah, would you start us on the next one?
Oh, sure.
If students express that they're not happy and would like a choice of instructors, what do you see as a solution to that situation?
That is a tricky one, because I am also a parent. I think as soon as we are in the business of, I don't know if anybody in here has ever tried to manage the schedule at high school, and this is primarily an issue at high school, but also in elementary. It comes up in both places. But managing the schedule in the high school is an unbelievable Rubik's Cube, and if we then overlay on top of that student preference, that's very difficult. So I would say that 2 things. One, I would say the same thing I would say to my own child, which is you don't always get to pick who you're going to work with, and you don't always get to pick who's going to be your boss. And part of the life skill is getting yourself in a situation where you then need to learn as much as you possibly can from the person that you are with. And that said, if there is a significant conflict or a serious problem, that is why we have really strong building administrators, and it is their job then to work with those educators to help resolve that. And parents should be asking their principals to work with them on that. Did that answer the question? It's really messy.
That is a messy question. And as a teacher, I've been in that situation where I've had a student who wasn't real excited about me at the first month, maybe 2, maybe 3. Anyways, it was a long time. But when I think about it as a teacher and as a citizen of the Mankato area, I really grew to enjoy this student very much, and we started to develop a very fun relationship, and we still, just to this day, go, remember when you just hated my guts and you ran to the principal's office and you said, I can't stand her, and I think it was for, like I said, a long period of time. And so I guess I could say as a teacher that for the kids' development, that it sometimes blossoms, and I think there can be good from that.
Jody, I have a similar story, and that is that a friend of mine at the beginning of school was telling me that her 5th grader was so disappointed with the teacher that he got, and he knew he wasn't going to like her, and he was just miserable about it, and he moped and he moped, and he hoped his mom would do something, which she didn't. When I talked to her last week, he was having a wonderful time. He loved his teacher. School was going just great for him. So I agree with what Jody said in terms of giving those relationships a chance to develop and to blossom. But I also agree with what Sarah said, and that is that I have a great deal of confidence in our administrative staff and in our teaching staff. We have parent-teacher conferences 3 times a year, and teachers are available for additional conferences if parents do detect a problem. And that there are lots of opportunities to problem solve and work out something that will be best for that student and that classroom.
I first want to say, if I didn't keep every teacher I did, the first impression I had to get along with, I wouldn't have made it near as far as I have. And also as a counselor, I would recommend that we get together and work out whatever the problems may be between the students and the teacher, and that can happen in a variety of ways. And to utilize the parent-teacher conferences that are available, or to seek out other kind of problem-solving methods between the parents, the student, most importantly the student, and the instructor, and to see if we can somehow resolve our differences. But to just create a chaos by moving students by preference or by choice, I think we get into some pretty sticky situations.
I think cannot always go by the preference of the kids. To have a successful education is to support the teachers and give them the tools and the environment that they can function at the top level. But if there's a problem, I mean, their life is not perfect always. If there's a problem, of course, the administrators of the school, if there's a consistency about a certain complaint about a particular teacher, of course, there should be a system to resolve that. And we should be able to do that.
We currently do have systems in place that have all been mentioned with the answers before. The key here is to have the building administrator and teacher know that there may be an issue or a problem. They got to know it first. If it just continues to linger and that student continues to not succeed in that class without the teacher knowing that might be the issue, or the administrator not knowing that's the issue, they can't look at the data to say, we need to correct something and find out what's wrong. Because that's really what the issue is getting that student to move from where they're currently at in their education process to the next level. And so it really doesn't matter which particular teacher it is, it's the process that's in place.
I believe that we have professional educators in all of our buildings and in all of our classrooms. That is the goal of our district, and that is the focus of our district. If a parent is concerned about the happiness of their child, that's one issue. If the parent is concerned about that student's achievement,
I think that's also an issue. I would highly support the conversation between the parent, the student, and the teacher and the principal. The job of a school board is not to get in there and micromanage that. We may be the ear of that parent, and part of our job is to encourage that parent and to have those continued conversations and try to problem solve through those kinds of venues to advocate for their student. But I do believe we have professional educators in all of our buildings who are there with the students' welfare in mind.
Let's start with Jody, I think. The other one we haven't begun with yet. If you have not already stated what your motivation is to be on the school board, please do so now.
One of my motivations was to find out how things work. I've always been sort of a well-rounded kind of person. I am definitely that person who's in the Governors and in Toastmasters, playing in the bell choir, and I'm always willing to try new things. And since I've been a soldier on the forefront of teaching here in Mankato for the last 10 years, I guess I just wanted to see what I could do to help the Mankato community if I do choose to stay.
When I was 6 years old and learning how to read, I came home every day from school and taught my 4-year-old sister how to read along with me. I think that I've always wanted to be part of an education system as a teacher originally, and then as I became more involved as an administrator and finally as a school board member. Now that I'm retired from my professional career, I find that I couldn't just walk away from education. It's in my blood. It's something I've been doing in one form or another, as I said, since I was 6 years old. And it's a way for me to give back to the community for what they've provided for my family, for my children, and for me. And I love what I'm doing on the school board, and I would love to have the opportunity to continue.
Having served in the military the last 10 years, I've been fortunate enough to give back to our country in a way that not everybody's able to. And the feeling that I get from that it's just awesome. And so as I sit here in Mankato, I thought, how can I get some of that same feeling at a local level? And so I thought about some of my options here at the local level, and I thought, where better to start than the school board, than to oversee the education of our children. And having kids who are just about or getting into District 77, I thought, this is a good opportunity to ensure that we're putting the priorities of my children and your children first.
I have lived in the U.S. for about 30 years, most of that on the East Coast of the United States. And about 2 years ago, I moved to Mankato, Midwestern, which is completely a different culture than the Eastern United States. America was America to me until I moved here to the Midwest, and I found out that the reputation of America is actually made in the Midwest, that people here are really open-minded and very progressive, and willing to give you an opportunity, to do something, and they don't judge you because of the color of your skin. And because of that, since I moved here, it has influenced me greatly in a positive way, and I wanted to contribute to this great, city and this great country. And in addition to having 6 kids in the school district, I also wanted to help everybody else's children and contribute to that common good.
Very good answer. But they're all very good answers. And it's so nice to have 8 people running for 4 spots, where 2 years ago we had 3 people running for 3 candidate spots. And, so this is very refreshing. My particular motivation for being on the running for a school board is that I've been on a lot of boards. Maybe many of you have been on other boards as well. I've had the opportunity to be president of some of these boards, and it came down to a lot of passion that I have for kids. I really like kids. So with the encouragement of some friends and family. They encourage me to run for school board. It really has been very enjoyable. I've gotten a lot more out of it than I think, hopefully, I should say, I can hopefully give back as much as I've gotten out of it. So I'd like to have the opportunity to serve for another 4 years.
I'm willing to bet that of all the candidates sitting here, every one of us has a different motivation. I have 4 reasons that I ran for the school board sitting in this room right now. I have the 5th reason in a college 3 hours to go west of us right now. I have similar stories to Judy. First grade, I knew this is where I was going. This is what I was going to do. We all have a different motivation for being here. We all have a different reason for staying here, to stay on this board. It's probably one of the best opportunities that I know of to be directly involved with how your community works and the basic improvement, the very gut level of how to make your community a better place to live. And I hope over the last 15 years I've done that. If I have the opportunity for 4 more years to do that, I will embrace it and give it my best shot, just as I have for the last 15 years. But this is one of the best places on earth to live, and that's Mankato, Minnesota.
As a taxpayer, I guess my primary reason for running is because I'm looking for stability. And when you look at what's happening at the state level and at the national level right now, there's not a lot of stability. And there's not a lot of role modeling of really good, positive decision-making, even when there's great disagreement. And we as a board have great disagreement. It may not appear that way right this minute, but there are times when we seriously disagree, and it's not always comfortable, but it's always civil, it's always professional, and every single person at the table is there for the same reason, because we want to do the best thing for the students, the staff, and for the community overall. And my concern as a taxpayer is really looking at the difficult decisions that are going to have to be made financially primarily, but others as well, over the next 2 to 3 years, and wanting to make sure that we have a stable group of people who are willing to work together and make those hard decisions even when it's really, really uncomfortable.
Sure. Next question, and I've got just one more after this. I applaud the efforts to manage the budget responsibly. However, I have real concerns that teachers haven't had raises or may not have them in the future. How can we balance the budget but give our teachers modest raises?
Well, that's a hard question to answer. We certainly value our teachers. We think we have the greatest teaching staff there is, and we really do want to reward them in any way that we can. We do not have a lot of control over the budget, and 80% of our budget, or over 80% of our budget, goes to salaries and benefits for staff. We struggle with balancing that budget and looking at what we can do for our teachers. We will continue to do that. We're in the process of doing that right now. And we do want our teachers to know that we think what they do is important. We think that what they do is of a high quality. And as a board, we do want to find ways to reward them.
Being a teacher or being responsible for the education of our children is an awesome privilege. And I applaud the teachers that do it, because I know they don't do it for the money. They don't. There are a lot of other jobs they could be making more money. And so I agree with what was previously saying in finding ways to reward and to incentivize to keeping the teachers here that can help them grow. And so taking a closer look at what is available, and money is short. We all know that. It's short for everybody. It's not no mystery there. And so looking at creative ways to keep the quality teachers we have for our children here in place.
I came from a culture where everyone, all the children were raised to know that we have 3 parents. your mother and father, and then the teacher. So teachers, deserve our respect and our support, and that's the path to a successful education. And we have to show that in terms of money as salary to the teachers. We have to show that in providing them the support that they need, whatever the case may be. And we have to find a way to compensate the teachers and attract the best talent. Keep the ones we have and attract the best talents in the future. We don't have to always, raise taxes to support, to pay our teachers. We can always seek partnership, and we have to find alternative funding so that we can keep our teachers happy and wanting to teach.
The question was balancing the budget with modest increases for teachers, and that is a tricky slope to handle because with the government, state of Minnesota shifting more and more away from us, and paying us at a later date, gets to be something quite an animal to manage. Statistics show that money isn't everything, but happiness is. So there are ways to create a happy work environment for our teachers here. One of the things that we did a couple of years ago was establish what's called the district roadmap. And in doing that, one of the key issues was empowering people to make the decisions at the local level in each particular building. Each building is different. And I think that's one thing that's contributed to their happiness. They didn't feel that all the push for the school district was not all from the top down. What we wanted was from the bottom up. They're the ones that are teaching our students. That's what pavement is, the road.
That stop sign. At the table right now are three of the negotiators for the district that goes into that conversation with the teachers. It is a very collaborative process between the teachers and staff, the negotiators for the teachers union, as well as those negotiators for the school district. There's X number of dollars. If this is really a question about dollars and being able to increase paychecks, there's X number of dollars, there's X number of teachers. How do we want that to play out? And so we have that conversation with our teachers right from the very start as we have that roundtable discussion. Where do we want to put the money? Where do we want to put language? So I still think that whole process is very collaborative. It's very talkable because there's only so much that you have in terms of dollars to deal with.
Nothing would give me more joy than giving every one of our teachers a huge raise. That said, just to reiterate what Judy said, 80% of our budget is salaries. The other 20% is fixed. There's nothing that can be cut there. It's transportation. It's things. There's really no wiggle room. So we've got a lot of teachers. We'd love to give them all raises. They need a lot of support people to help them do their jobs. The people who serve the food, the building leaders, the principals, the people who sweep the floor after everyone's gone home, all of those people also deserve raises. And so as soon as you start talking about giving everybody raises, something has to be cut then. And what ends up happening is then you might cut a support. Well, now the teacher's job is harder. Or you might cut some teachers because now we need more resources. Well, now class sizes just went up. And so every time you push or pull anything, there's a ripple effect. And so easily the most difficult, challenging, really heart-wrenching part of this learning process for me has been learning how do we juggle all of that and create the climate that Tom was talking about that make people happy. Sorry, Don.
All right, board, get your wild cards ready because I'm pretty sure that they're going to go flying up here in a second. All right. Many of you might know that the teachers decided to go with a pay freeze as far as a great collaborative unit. I guess when you talk about dollars and cents, I do have to maybe ask, and one of the reasons why I might be on this process is because administration ended up with a 2% raise. Now, if we're all going to take it, we're all going to take it together. But I guess I just have to maybe ask that question as a teacher.
I was on the last negotiating session as well. We negotiate teacher contracts and all of our contracts. We have 7 bargaining units, so we negotiate those every 2 years. We did offer a pay increase last time, and it was to the Mankato Teachers Association. They just felt it was not enough, and we felt it was the most that we could give based upon the funding that we were getting from the state. So we felt that we could give the best that we could. It wound up in mediation, and which is not a fun process for either party, and we certainly don't hope not to go there again. Unfortunately, it was ruled that the pay freeze was the appropriate method for this particular contract, and so that's what we had to go with.
You get any wild cards, I noticed as I was looking through the questions and I looked at our 3 topics for the evening that we hadn't really touched on one of them. So with your indulgence, I have one question that I want to insert. Do you think, or are there additional and/or alternative sources of funding which the district should pursue? And let's start with someone who has a hand. Sarah? First.
Additional and/or alternative sources of income.
Yes.
You know, I don't have a good answer for that question. I guess philosophically, I believe, as I said earlier, it should be fully funded by the state. One of the things I think we have done an exceptionally good job of, my sister's a teacher up in the metro area, I know this is not happening everywhere, of really building partnerships with our businesses. And that's something that is expanding every year. And Jonathan's actually been a huge part of that, working with Monty Schwartz and his team. And I think building on those sorts of things makes sense. I don't think it makes sense to be trying to fund with a grant here, an additional piece of income that might be here that's not going to be there every year, because then we're constantly scrambling. That takes a tremendous amount of time and resources and a drain away from what we are supposed to be doing, which is preparing our future workforce and our future citizens. And so that's a tricky question. I don't know if that's the answer anyone was hoping to hear, but that really philosophically is how I believe it should work in the state of Minnesota.
I would agree with Sarah. It's very difficult to have that one-time grant piece come to you from wherever it is, whether it's a local company or whether it's some stimulus dollars that come into your district from the federal government. You have to have what happens 2 years later if those dollars are no longer there. We've made every effort to use, for example, again, I'll use the stimulus dollars. We've used those as a training model or something so that we can train staff or train departments so that there's a continuation of that skill after those dollars go away. We have lots of partnerships in place, and Sarah mentioned several of them, and they're with different workforce areas, they're with different companies within our town. We have a huge support in terms of Educare that does private kind of donations and private granting to very specific programs, but it's a nice place that we go when we get that one-time dollar amount and then nothing after that.
The question was ideas for alternative funding, and I agree. I've been 4 years here trying to think, where's the alternative funding? And it is very, very difficult. Just to give you a little bit of perspective of our school size, from a student population size, we're about 7,300 students. That's about the same size as Edina. Our particular school district is 143 square miles. Edina School District is about 14 square miles. Yet they have twice the property value that Mankato has in that 143 square miles. So this goes back to referendums. Their referendum dollars go a lot farther because they have twice the property value that we have. Alternative funding, I don't have a great answer, and I apologize for that, but just to give you a little idea of how we have to manage the budget and the cards and the revenue that we're dealt with, we look at every particular corner of the district to see how we're spending it and make sure we're spending it wisely.
I personally think we should pursue additional sources of funding or alternative sources of funding through private, whether it's foundations or private companies. If we can, call stadiums after companies and get funding for a stadium, to be built, I think we can do the same with our education. We have to look everywhere, because the funds that we are relying on, state funding or local or any other funding, is becoming extremely very difficult to sustain as well. So we have to look for alternative sources of funding and find a way to streamline it so that we can participate.
Kind of echo off what was already said. I agree with the side that seeking out one-time grants is kind of like deep-sea fishing. You may get lucky once in a while, but what happens in the year when that funding doesn't fall through and you have a shortfall and you have some tough choices to make. And so to look for more long-term is kind of where I would direct that. Now, that being said, I think we can tap into our community resources for a lot of other things. For example, the Department of Counseling and Student Personnel, which I teach adjunct in, we have a program where we bring our graduate students right here to this middle school, to this media center, to those computers right behind there, and we help kids learn how to use and operate Macs and iMovies and iPods and those things. So to continue to develop those partnerships, to bring resources in that are glad to come, that don't cost anybody anything as far as dollars and cents.
I agree with everything that's been said, but I'll tell you what my own personal effort is, and that is that I'm on the legislative committee for the school district. We work very closely with our legislators. I've made it a point to have a personal relationship with all of our local legislators at the state and federal level, and we talk about education and education funding all the time. I also, our professional organization, the Minnesota School Board Association, has lobbyists at the legislature. I think what we need to do is we need to change the funding of public education, and I'm working as hard as I can to try and see that that happens.
That's okay, she probably didn't. All right, no, I understand. I really would rather not speak in public a whole lot, but I guess if I have to, right? All right. I do know that we do have a alternative means of financial support through special education. I don't know if some of you have ever heard of third-party billing, but apparently special education has brought in $1 million. See, the government promised us way back when in Public Law 94-142 that they were going to give us a certain percentage of our financial contributions to special education, and they have not been able to accommodate that. So third-party billing has to do with going through, and if you have a kid with special needs or any kind of need, that you're able to work with the school nurses to be able to bill back, as opposed, I guess it's called third-party billing for a reason. So our district has brought in $1 million in those kind of sources, and we do have people out there being very creative as far as like, where is that money, and we try to find it.
Just the microphone down to you, please. Give you one last question, and then after this question, I'll give everyone the opportunity to give us a last statement in 30 seconds. Okay? We'll have one last question before that. Can each of you summarize in 3 words your strengths, and in 1 word, your weakness?
Well, I'll start with my weakness. I love kids, and I want all our kids to be successful in their education because they are our future. My strength is to tell it like it is and to face reality and to deal with it.
I will also start with my weakness, and very similar to Abdi is that I'm an idealist. I really think I strive for the best, and some may call that a strength and some may call that a weakness, but it plays into my strengths very well in that I'm committed, I'm a proven leader, and I really want what's best for District 77 and the education of our students.
This is really hard. My strengths, I guess I would say I have passion, I have commitment, and I follow through. My weakness is I'm a softie, and I want everybody to be happy, and I want everybody to have the best.
All right, I'm going to start with my strengths because that's always the hardest for me. I would say I'm industrious, I'm open-minded, and I am everybody else's best cheerleader if you get to know me. And some of my weaknesses is definitely just self-confidence. I'm the middle child, what can I say?
I'm going to start with my weakness, and I would say the biggest weakness that I have is that I'm very impatient. And I've had a lot of opportunity these past 4 years to do that every week. And that's because I really want things to move faster, but I've learned that there's a lot of good reasons why it shouldn't move faster. There's a good reason for having the process in place, and it's been a steep learning curve for me, and I feel like I've come a long way on that. My 3 words, we've heard some of them, but I wrote them down, so I'm committed to them. One is I'm passionate. If you've ever worked with me on anything, I am fully engaged. I'm a critical thinker. I like looking at things from all sides, and I always approach an issue open-minded, and I'm willing to consider everyone's perspective before I'm going to make a final decision on anything.
First of all, I don't believe in weaknesses. Okay. I think we have a broad spectrum of strengths. And some of our strengths need more push than others do. So, with that in mind, I think some of my strongest points are my ability to be collaborative or to have that discussion with people. I tend to be a strong advocate for public education and for young people and staff and for school districts. I tend to be a believer, but my believer also pushes against that less than strong part of me, and that's that I become impatient at times with people who want to constantly challenge and constantly put down what public education is. So I struggle with that part of it. So can I do it in 4 words? Because I don't believe in weaknesses, there are 4 words that I come up with. So it would be a collaborator or collaboration, somebody who's strong, has strength, someone who believes, and someone who gets impatient with those who don't believe.
This is like that ABC on Sunday mornings in 3 words?
Yeah.
Flip over?
I feel like Andy Ruby does.
Yeah. 3 words for my strengths are finances, planning, listener.
Yeah.
Those I think are...
Those are spot on.
I'm 52, I hope I know myself by now. And I also know my weaknesses, and there is more than one. But curriculum. As I mentioned before, we have some great people on the board that are much better at curriculum than I am. So when that comes, I bow to their strengths and listen to them.
Dad, would you start us off with final statements, please?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank everybody for coming, and second of all, I'd like to thank the other candidates here for sharing their views on this. What I've learned thus far is hearing the questions that have come from you, the audience. There's a lot of challenges that our incumbents have faced and that we will continue to face as we move forward, as we talk about education. I, for one, have never backed down from a challenge, whether it's being a first-generation college student, whether it's being told that you're not strong enough to be in the military and becoming an officer and leading a battalion. Oh, was it that quick? I've never backed down from the challenge, and I won't back down from the challenge of committing to our children's education and enhancing this community that we live in.
I also feel the same way because this is a great community and it's very inclusive to do common good, to be involved in the common good. And because of that, I wanted to run for a school board to contribute to the common good. And I believe that public education can be a partnership between, the public funding and private funding. It doesn't have to always be completely public. And we, like the preschool right now in the school district, which is completely private funded. We cannot do that with public, the rest of the school, but we can come halfway. We can bring in private funding.
It's been very rewarding the last 4 years. I truly would like to serve another 4 years. I hope that I have the kids' best interest at heart. I hope I have the community and taxpayers' interest at heart. I do want to be part of the process for planning for the future. Right now we're looking at our 5-year plan, and I want to be a part of that. And welcome anybody's comments that we might be able to bring to the table. And as I mentioned before, I'll listen. And it may not be what you want, but I'll certainly listen to you.
I'd like to thank you all for coming. Being on the school board has allowed me to understand that there are not two sides to every story. There are facets. There are many, many sides to every story. And I believe that I have the ability to continue to understand and to dig for and to look for and to develop decisions based upon the information that I have at the time. Our current school board is strong. Our current school board is committed to the families and the community in which we live.
I kind of spoke to this issue earlier, but I really would like to serve for 4 more years to maintain stability and to continue the work that I'm doing in the area of early childhood and kindergarten readiness. And also because my friends say, why do you want to make those difficult decisions? Particularly, we touched on the mediation. That was heart-wrenching, and there were tears. It was very difficult. And what I say is I would rather be at the table learning the information, digesting the information, having the opportunity to ask the questions, and then participate in the decision-making process. And that's one way I can serve our community. And thank you for coming. It's nice having an audience. We don't always at school board.
Yes. Thank you again for everybody. And I just want to say it's been a big honor and a big learning experience. You guys have done a great job. The current board is second to none. A lot of times when you ask people, why are you running or why are you going in to do something? Hey, I'd rather be moving forward than just sit around. And I'm a person of action, and I don't always just talk about it. And so it's been a very learning experience. So thank you.
I'm incredibly proud of the strategic roadmap that guides the work we do. I'm also incredibly proud to have been part of the most recent superintendent search and the successful superintendent that we selected. And I'm extremely proud of Rosa Parks School, but we have more challenges, more space challenges ahead. All of this is a journey. We're not there yet. I'm not finished yet. I have lots left to do, and I hope you will give me a chance to do it. Thank you all for voting, for coming this evening, and for being part of the Mankato District.
Well, as each of the candidates has said, thank you for coming tonight. It's not easy to sit up here. So thank you to the candidates. It's not easy to sit up here and field questions when you don't know what's coming at you. And to try to somehow create a coherent, succinct message within 60 seconds. Now you get a little time between people sometimes, but it's still not an easy thing to do. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for being a part of that. I want to thank Yvonne, Kay for their help tonight. I want to remind you of a couple of things on the calendar. Next week, there will be a technology referendum issues dialogue that Superintendent Allen will participate in to answer more questions that you and others may have about the technology referendum that some of the folks spoke of tonight. That'll be 2:30 to 4 o'clock in the afternoon at the Greater Mankato Business Development Center, which is on the east side of town. And then we'll be back again for the second and final candidate forum on Tuesday evening the 25th, so 2 weeks from tonight. Tuesday evening, 6:30 to 8. That one will be held at East Junior High in the media room there as well. And the focus that evening, you heard some of that discussion tonight as well, will be on student achievement and success of students. But again, all questions will be welcome that evening as well. As I mentioned in the beginning, if you want to learn more about these candidates that maybe didn't get answered tonight, you can check their profiles or their biographies, answers to questions on our website, greatermankato.com. And remember, this election is important, as all elections are, but I think one or two of the candidates mentioned there's 4 seats that are open. There's 8 candidates. And in a school board election, the individuals that get the top 4 votes are the individuals that get elected. You don't have 2 or 3 people facing off like Representative Briner, thank you for being here tonight, is used to in her elections. Instead, you have 8 people vying for 4 seats. And so every vote matters. And, this is your opportunity to participate. Finally, my personal thanks to these candidates. serving community and making your community a better place is an incredibly noble thing that you can do, and something for which families and individuals in this community owe you a deep debt of gratitude. To serve on the board or even to run in an election and say that you're willing to serve if elected is really a remarkable commitment. So my personal thanks to each one of you for participating in this process and showing the courage to be part of it. So with that, thank you to each one of you. Thank you to all of you. With that, a good night, and we hope to see you next week and the weekend. Thanks so much.